Well, every case is different. As you understand from observing the occurrences that happen in our community, every single case is different. So even if there is a person of interest named, it doesn't mean that person is a suspect. Those individuals could have information. Everything and every effort that is taken where there is a public announcement, it's really to gather evidence and to ensure that when a suspect is identified, it is the correct person, and to ensure that whatever evidence there is enough to proceed and to meet the elements of the offense. And so we don't know oftentimes whether or not, from a public standpoint, a person of interest is a suspect or whether they are suspected to have information. But what we do know is that there is always an effort to investigate and get the information needed to be able to identify a suspect. Yeah, it really depends on the case, and you can't nail down, how often a person of interest is an actual suspect, because the only people who actually know are the investigators. And it's very important to note that just because someone is named a person of interest, it doesn't mean they're a suspect. And that misconception could hamper someone actually coming forward if they are not a suspect and someone who is suspected to have information. And we always want our community members to be willing to come forward if they do have information, and not be unafraid that they're going to be identified as a suspect if that's not the case.
Just when a homicide case isn't cleared, when there's still missing information out there, what's the challenge, what's the burden there for both investigators and prosecutors like yourself when you have an unsolved case, but you also have unsolved cases based on missing information in a case like this one is?
So we have to have the necessary information to prove the elements of a crime. That means that we have to be able to properly identify a suspect. We have to be able to identify where the jurisdiction is, and we have to meet the elements of the offense. And so if we don't have the evidence, whether it's testimonial with eyewitnesses or whether it is forensic, if we don't have the necessary elements of the crime and we can't meet our burden to prove that case beyond a reasonable doubt, we're going to run into issues. And so it's very serious and very important that matters are investigated thoroughly and that witnesses come forward with information so that we can prove those cases beyond a reasonable doubt. Because the last thing we want families to experience is that they have to sit through a trial and experience the trauma of seeing what their loved one went through and there's not adequate evidence. And so it's always important, and it's a must that we have adequately identified the suspects properly and can prove beyond a reasonable doubt all the elements of the offense.
In your time here, what have you observed about the patterns or the behaviors of why certain people are potentially afraid to come forward with information, why they are not reluctant per se, but maybe they are concerned about coming forward? What have you found about that dynamic here in Portsmouth?
Witnesses everywhere, not just in Portsmouth, but around our state and around our nation, they are concerned with their safety, and rightfully so. They are concerned about being retaliated against when they come forward, and that is where it is important and imperative for law enforcement and for prosecutors to take a part in the protection of our witnesses who come forward. And that is a very real thing. It's not a fear that is unreasonable. It is actually fair for members of our community to be concerned about their own safety. And so it's something that our office has been very committed to speaking out about and very committed to participating in, and that's keeping our witnesses safe. But that is quite frankly one of the things that, it is a very valid concern for our community members when they have information.
No homicide is standard, but I think what stuck out to me is that it was first reported a fatal crash, and I don't remember the exact time frame, but at least a couple hours later, it was deemed, this victim was found with gunshot wounds, and so presume that's why they crashed the car. How rare is that? I have personally never seen something like that in my time as a reporter, so that's why it sticks out to me. Have you seen anything like that as a prosecutor, where it's a case that's one thing and then it becomes another? Just how rare is that, and is there anything we often glean from cases like that?
So as prosecutors, we often see a lot, and that is why we try to really stay rooted in the facts, and we look to our autopsies and our forensic examiners to really let us know what actually happened. And so it is important for us to not be committed to what we see initially, but to wait for the final say from autopsy reports and from our forensic examiners, just to ensure that we're not jumping to conclusions, because we do see circumstances where a crime will look one way and then it will turn out to be another way. And that is why evidence is so important, and why it's so important for us to be committed to seeking the truth and to awaiting full and thorough investigation.
Is there anything that you think are questions that you have as a prosecutor? There's still very little details. It's crash, homicide, gunshot wounds, and then persons of interest, and then pretty much no real updates over the last 20 months or so. Any questions that you have just as a person about something like this?
So in any case where we don't have a suspect and where the matter is unsolved and we have a family that is hurting and a community that is wondering, it always goes back to identifying the evidence and to being able to get our community members who may have information to come forward and be a part of the process of obtaining justice for lives that we've lost to crime. That is what it always comes down to, is a quest for the evidence and for the truth, so that we can present that to the fact finder and try to seek justice for the loved ones that were lost to the families in our community.
How do unsolved investigations in cases like this, what is the emotional trauma that leaves on families for that period of time where they don't have those answers?
When we have cases that go unsolved and there is no opportunity to have a resolution, to seek justice, to get the closure of someone being held accountable, it's devastating. Families are hurt and communities are hurt. Our community hurts as well, because we feel the loss when we have community members who they're contributing, they have loved ones, they have children. It hurts our community, but more importantly, the families, they feel devastation. Their peace is disrupted. The healing process is disrupted. We want our families to be able to heal in some way. We know that they could never be made whole, but that opportunity to heal is lost when there is a lack of being able to close the case and identify the suspect and create that opportunity for seeking justice. And so that is what our community needs to know, is that when they have information, it is vital to our community for safety purposes, but more importantly, for families to be able to heal and to be able to really seek closure and to find justice and accountability for the ones who harmed their loved ones and really took something away from their families that we can't get them back.